Okay. Okay. Welcome again. Okay, my name is Jaeyeon Choi. I'm a senior lecturer at Vermont University in the UK. I'm a moderator here today. I hope you guys all have a warm tea in your hand. So this is a tea time chat.
God.
Oh, thank you.
You got coffee.
You got mine.
Oh, you got coffee. Very American of you.
American, Italian.
Oh yeah, right, Italian too. So we have a very, very exciting expert speaker team here today. Thank you so much for accepting my invitations. We have Brooke at Rhodes College, Tennessee, United States. Brooke, you wanna say hi?
Hi, everyone
Brooke.
here and watching later.
Thank you. Very nice background. And Brooke, in fact, just published a new book, Buddhist Tourism in Asia, right?
That's right. Yes, a co-edited volume with the chapters,
Right.
contributions from a number of scholars.
Yeah. So if you're interested in Buddhist tourism Asia, definitely look up Brooke's page and order the book and read her book. And we have another speaker, Mahyani, in Bali. She's an associate professor in accounting, and she's also a sustainable business consultant at INSITA that she established for a consulting business. She's working at Undiknas University in Bali. That's the best university, private university in Bali, isn't it?
Thank you.
Welcome, Mahyani. How are you?
Hi, very good.
What time is it now in Bali?
It's 9 p.m.
9 p.m. Okay, thanks so much
Yeah.
for joining us.
I would like to greet with Balinese. Om Swastiastu.
Om Swastiastu.
Oh, very nice.
Thank you, Mahyani. And we have a Kiran here. He's a senior lecturer in urban planning at La Trobe University, Australia. And Kiran also just published the report on Buddhist tourism in UNWTO, right? Kiran, hello, Kiran. How are you?
Thanks for invite. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Jaeyeon.
I know it's your bedtime. It's 11 p.m. in Australia. But thanks so much for joining us at your bedtime. And we have our last speaker, Michael D. Jovan. He's an associate professor in anthropology at Westchester University in the United States. He's also a president of Association of American Anthropologists, tourism interest group, right?
Yep, there it is. That
Oh,
way.
yeah, right.
That way.
Hello, Michael. How are you?
Hi, how are you? Good morning for everybody in the United States.
Thanks so much for your time and joining us on a Saturday.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, everyone. I know I sent you a couple of questions for discussion today for wellness and spiritual tourism and post-COVID-19 world, if there is. But before I start questions, if you have any few words to share, any thoughts?
I'll start with one word, because I was thinking a lot about this in the last couple of days, and I think it's kind of, I think you got a great theme, you know, wellness tourism, because obviously everything about COVID has to deal with wellness, whether or not we're actually talking about the kinds of, you know, niche tourism that we're going to discuss today. And we have to, you know, I was thinking it was really ironic actually that, you know, the pandemic kind of became a pandemic precisely through tourism and through touristic infrastructure, you know, festivals and marketplaces, sites of domestic tourism. You had, you know, Chinese New Year, and it also then was spread through, you know, airplanes and things like that to touristic destinations like Italy, Spain, these giant, even America, which has a significant portion of GDP. And then, of course, it was affecting tourism as one of the biggest sectors affected by this as well. So I think it's great that you got us all together, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree, and I would like to, I understand wellness and like well-being, you know, tourism for that reason, but how are we thinking about spiritual tourism here as someone a little bit outside of, I mean, I'm within tourism studies, but I'm also more in religious studies. So what do you think, Jaeyeon, how are we thinking about spiritual tourism here?
That's a really good question. I've been kind of trying to work with COVID-19 and spiritual tourism for my own research as well, right? Mm-hmm. But Okay, people do maybe more meditation, more mindfulness, more yoga at home right now since we're locked down. And I read your conversation paper about more mindfulness as a leisure activities now. But what about tourism? If they can do mindfulness and yoga at home in their living room, why they have to travel to Bali or Chiang Mai? That's been my question, right? And obviously there's a restriction and there's a perceived danger there. But interestingly, there are many newspaper articles by tourism experts. Post-COVID-19, people will just go to Bali, go to these remote, quiet places to kind of recover from stress of lockdown, stress of pandemic. So they're saying people will travel more to these spiritual destinations. So I was gonna ask you guys, would that be kind of happening? I mean, we are not fortune tellers here, but but yeah, that's my question actually. Would the people do that once we are free from lockdown? We go to Bali, we go to Ubud and recover, and people will do that. And who would do that? Who would do that first? That's also a question. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but I'll start just because to answer Brooke's question, you know, one of the things we have to remember, and at least I'm an anthropologist, right? So those in the social sciences especially really look at wellness in general as more than just biological health, right? It's more about, you know, this total holistic balance between biological or physical health, mental well-being, psychological well-being, emotional, social well-being, and I always add spiritual when I teach this stuff, because I think that is, you know, to feel connected and to feel balanced, as well as free from disease. And again, disease, you know, especially in the West, we have this idea that it's COVID, right? It's this thing that's coming in and attacking us, but disease is anything that throws you ill at ease, off of ease. So, you know, we do see people, we've all been doing this, retreating out as soon as, you know, it opens up, you know, the quarantines kind of open up like it did this week in America. Everyone just rushed to the beach, and it was, you know, it was crazy, and it's not smart. But at the same time, you know, you do see this need to right some of the social imbalances, even at the expense of maybe physical, biological balances that you have. So I think, you know, I work in pilgrimage, religious tourism. Jan and I just published a book. I should put that in the background. Our book, there it goes. You know,
Wow.
But you know, and I think though that people always are traveling, you know, on pilgrimages and religious tourism, especially to get that connection, that balance is fine. And regardless of whether or not you're going to be praying or meditating at home, there's still that impetus, that social impetus to travel to, you know, the site, the center of your you know, community's religious place, you know. So that's how I would consider all of these together, both spa tourism and hiking and these more religious bases.
I think I agree with what Michael said. In my opinion, as the pandemic has forced people to stay at home and keep social distance, this may cause lots of people, lots of stress for those who cannot accept this situation. But for those who could take this situation as a great time for self-reflection, they may come as a new person post-COVID-19. But I believe that whatever the type of response people take to the pandemic, the awareness of the importance of achieving holistic health will increase dramatically. And this will further drive the demand for spiritual and wellness tourism. So I'm really optimistic that wellness and spiritual tourism will get a great demand in the future.
Oh yeah, Kiran.
I think that idea of consciousness and well-being is quite ingrained now. I think it's this lockdown has given people some opportunity to be in the state of nothingness and doing nothing, and that's where the reflection is coming in, right?
Yeah, that's true. To slow down as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if you look at this, I think the first thing when people do say, oh, COVID is going to change the whole thing, and this, I think it's more of a knee-jerk reaction rather than a long-standing or a long-term change. We are looking at a very different, at least I'm looking at a very different kind of scenario. It's not going to be very dramatic because how much ever people are health conscious, and the idea of wellness from my perspective is to improve health, and that's body, mind, and soul, right? Now you can improve your body by going to a spa and wellness clinics and change of place and all of that stuff, right? But the bottom line is you need money. And we've seen when millions of people are going out of job and the employment structure is changing, how does one first get settled with their own body in the physical world? I think that's the biggest challenge. That's the biggest hurdle. So that's the short-term, immediate kind of a shock that people have to work with. Once that affordability comes in, then all the other stuff will start rolling in. So we need to be a little mindful about what happens in the next 6 months or about a year's time when we start this major movement about health and health consciousness coming into play. As we do that, I think it's also what I think about is we all know how many online courses are happening with yoga, meditation, everything, right? So there will be a latent demand, as Mayun is saying, there will be a latent demand most likely that, oh, I've been hearing this music about, let's say, trance music from Chiang Mai, right? So I should go to Chiang Mai for sure. That's where it's coming from. Or I can hear the Himalayan waters streaming in. I want to go there, right? But that's not possible in the immediate future. So all of this is definitely going, there is a optimism, but I think we also need to be a little cautious about it all comes at a price. And who will be able to afford this travel for that body, mind, soul? Because until you address body first, you can't reach to the mind and the soul, right?
Right, and you know, we're even talking about this in our universities, right? That we can't have, with my large classes, we have to separate students. You can only have half the class come in and half the class. So when you start to segregate like that in an economic situation like you're talking about here, and you're you know, what I fear is that one direction that it's going to go is that it's going to be one of these elite travel kinds of experience. Tourism is only for the elite, going back to the 1950s or earlier.
Yeah.
You know, or even worse, you know, the other, we're talking to some epidemiologists who work in tourism and study abroad and things like that. You know, they're saying, well, it's going to be a total paradigm shift. Everything's going to go virtual. That's what we're going to have to do. You know, and then it's like, all right, well, now we're just armchair travelers. Now we're in the 1800s, you know, and you know, even worse. So, you know, even though it's much more sustainable maybe to just zoom in like this, when I can look at the wonderful World Heritage Site in Indonesia here from Pennsylvania, you know, it's not the same thing as being there, of course.
Yeah, really interesting. And some Southeast Asian destinations are reopening soon, but they're saying they're going to open 4 or 5 star first, and they only look for kind of the lucrative markets. So who travel first to these wellness destinations? Also, it kind of creates the, you know, the inequality in tourism.
Yeah,
The managers who are taking a lot of pay at this point of time. Those are the
Who
managers
can pursue wellness, and who can achieve spirituality?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can.
I think, I mean, it goes in waves. Yeah, sorry, Brooke. Yeah.
These like meditation retreats, they, you know, they take so many people to pull them off, and most of them have been, you know, of course, canceled. And I don't know when they would start again, because, you know, some of these have like hundreds of people in you know, in Thailand. So, you know, when is that going to be able to open up? And I don't think they'll open up just to a few people. You know, these kinds of more ones are just like based on, you know, donation or a kind of fixed lower cost. But I think that like the people that are able to go there, you know, like the place is, you know, of course it matters. Like, you know, I'm teaching a summer class, and it's based on Buddhism and Thai society, and, you know, it was like, oh, if we could, you know, if we could experience it, we could be there, it'd be totally different. So it's not like this is a good, you know, really a good way to simulate it. A lot of the teachers that I've been talking to, like meditation teachers, like they're opening up a little bit in some areas of the world, and so they're able to have some students come in, but at the same time they're on Zoom, so they're like doing double duty because they have to now opening up, and like so many people they can expose to the teachings at home, but then also people are coming in to experience it in person. So then now they're just like doing double the task to meet the demand of so many people that might want to do it virtually and be okay with that, and other people who might want to be able to come in.
Definitely more work. Can I ask you a question, Brooke? How elite are the travelers that do the meditation, the non-local travelers that do the meditation? Is this already a more self-selected group that, you know, that are already kind of more wealthy, that want to go to an ashram for a week or something in India or somewhere?
No, I don't think so. I mean, because in Thailand, like in Chiang Mai, on the backpacker route, you know, they have people that are just, you know, and it's cheap enough, and that it's not an elite. The meditation retreats, you know, maybe like, because I didn't say this, but maybe, you know, they're like the spas and, you know, like yoga retreats on like Koh Samui, those are expensive and those are not for budget travelers. But like meditation, there's certainly wellness meditation options at a budget that anyone can go to. There already.
Right.
Okay, on this I can tell you something. If you look at some of these retreat packages that are being offered in India, right? I was in December, I was actually in India doing some field work in Bodh Gaya and Sarnath and all these places. I look at that packages, you're talking about $2,000 upwards, right? Now, unless you're actually going with a group of monks, it's not cheap by that standard. But the point I'm trying to, depending on what you're seeking, and I think there's a fair amount of research on this, there's also a spectrum of spirituality, right? That some people are at the beginning of it, some people are the real seekers, and some people have got very different kind of ideas about spirituality. So I think as we go deeper and deeper, the market becomes more and more exclusive. Right. And it's that market that we're talking about. In general, I would go back to what Michael was saying at the beginning. You know, wellness is a very, it's an all-encompassing kind of a thing of being able to practice your religion, being able to remain faithful, be able to go to a sacred place and feel with that. Now, that's the kind of ordinary idea of travel, right? That's a little different because you're not paying for the wellness. You're paying for being in a certain kind of a situation and seeking your own wellness, right? Now, I want to add another dimension to this. This is my feeling, you know, being an expat now, living in Australia, still having connections in India and working in Asia. I think one of the key things that is coming up or dawning upon people here, particularly with diaspora and also in India, is that we don't have much time. So it is time to go and visit family and friends, which is something which we've not been doing for a long time. Because suddenly you're in the same city, you can meet your friends, you can meet your family. I think that initial sense of comfort, that sense of everybody's well, that reassurance is a must now. Yeah. I think there is a growing understanding of that besides physical health, you also need to have your peer group and your friends and your family. And that is probably, to me, going to be an extension or being an addition to this seeking of spiritual or religious kind of a motivation. So definitely, and that also ties up quite nicely with the economic conditions that we are in. We might not be able to afford, for example, an exclusive trip to Goa, which is a beach place in India, for example. But we would definitely like to go to a sacred place as a family. You know, we're going back to pre-leisure times. That's what I'm coming to, that the whole concept of leisure will now be reframed, not in the sense of enjoyment, but in the sense of probably looking at family and friends closely.
Yeah.
So maybe people even find maybe different spiritual destinations than post COVID-19. Like people used to go to Bali and Chiang Mai, but now they look for some places they can actually connect to with their family or identity or the personal connections. So not definition, but destination might be changing for spiritual tourism.
But I also want to kind of caution about who we're considering, who's they, who are the people that we're talking about. We're talking about international travelers, because I think the one thing that we're already seeing right now, only a couple months in really, you know, of this, is that there's a lot more domestic and local travel, you know, and, you know, just the other day I saw, you know, a news article about, you know, children, you know, around Siem Reap, you know, playing at Angkor. You know, finally you don't have to be with all the crowd. You know, you can actually visit your own, you know, sacred site. But we're seeing this even during the lockdown. I mean, even in suburban Westchester, you know, Pennsylvania, we start exploring just the streets around us. I mean, I've been living in my house for 7 years and I didn't know all my neighbors, you know. And now, you know, we're seeing everybody. We're riding down two blocks away with my kids. I never saw that street before, and now we're exploring more. People are going fishing in ponds nearby. I study, even though I used to work in Southeast Asia. My primary area is Italy, and in central Italy, in Umbria, there's a big trend already going on, starting since they've opened up gradually the lockdowns that were very harsh there, of doing what they're calling cocoon tourism or safe tourism. And what that is this idea, you know, instead of this adventure tourism kind of stuff, what you're doing is you're going out to a place that's relatively close by, but you're staying overnight in maybe these agritourisms or something, these country inns, you know, run by families that kind of the farms outlive their usefulness. They cook for you. They're people you trust. Right, they're people. They're out of the big cities. They only hold a couple of families at a time, if that. And so you're seeing that, you know, I think there's going to be more, at least in the medium term, a lot more reemergence of really local based, right? I mean, even, you know, I was talking to a friend the other day, and we always go down to North Carolina, and of course we're not going to do it this year. It's on the uptick in North Carolina right now, the coronavirus. And you know, he said, well, I think we should rent little cabins, you know, a couple miles away, a couple hours away in the Poconos, and we'll stay there. We'll teach the kids how to fish, and we'll, you know, and all that stuff. You know, again, those are, you know, you're re-exploring basically your own state, your own area. I think that we shouldn't discount that will go on as well. You know. So.
Definitely. And speaking about local tourism, I'll just unmute.
Yeah.
Yeah, local tourism. I was just thinking, used to be, if you're talking about Southeast Asian the destinations again, all these Western investors have yoga studios and mindfulness programs. They used to kind of own all these businesses, but there might be a kind of opportunity for locals to kind of finally do these businesses now, because all Westerners went home, and people looking for more small scale, local owned, community based, more authentic kind of a tourism. So there might be more opportunities for locals to kind of develop this kind of programs. Mahyunyi, you might know better.
Yeah, I think in the short term because there are lots of requirements to be fulfilled to fly other countries. Of course, the tourism will be mostly from domestic, as Michael said. So I think this will provide great time for the local to improve their businesses and to run their own businesses. And there are also trend for people to back to their ancestors' lifestyle. They are happy to have a camp in the top of the mountain, swim in the river. They feel like miss to experience like what they experience in the childlike. Yeah, more nature-based experience. So I think the tourism will shift from mass tourism to more ecotourism and community-based tourism. Yeah, that's my
So
opinion.
Mayani, would you say so? This kind of will give more opportunities for locals, not only for travel but also businesses against
Yeah,
COVID-19.
yeah, I think so because the pandemic also caused a lot of problem with the supply chain, and many things has the pandemic has a lot of impact to the supply chain. Lots of supply chain now more locals, and because of this, of course, we'll support the development of local farmer, and not also the farming, but the tourism supporting industries. Everything will be the demand for the local product will increase. I think that will support the development of local businesses.
Very good. But since we have Mayani here, can I ask one more question? We use all these Western definitions of wellness and spiritual tourism, right? But how would you define as a Balinese academic wellness tourism for Balinese people? Would it be different or?
Uh, for Balinese, we see wellness tourism is more about holistic well-being. It's not about physical health, but it's about body, mind, and soul health. It's a holistic point of view. So we are as Balinese, we used to take like herbal medicine first before seeing a doctor because we believe that connecting with nature is the key to achieve well-being. So I think well-being is more about holistic approach. Not if we feel sick, we approach that it's not only about our physical problem, but it may caused by our mind, our soul. So we normally treat if we feel sick, then we normally take a holistic treatment for this kind of sickness. So we do yoga and meditation for holistic well-being. I think well-being is about a holistic approach to health, not solo so not just about physical health, but also about body, mind, and soul health.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayani. Anybody else? Anything else to kind of add? Oh, Kiran?
Yeah. I think one of the questions that you are asking, like,
Yeah.
what I feel this, and this is purely based on what my thinking is. Everybody's talking of the new normal. I think it is about corrected normal. I think the normal will be corrected now because what we have seen in the past 2 decades or wherever, at least I can talk about India and South Asia in general, because of the increased globalization, the increased flow of people, there's been just too much of hyperactivity that's been going on. And particularly with tourism, for example, last year, probably about close to 2 million Indians traveled to Australia and South Asia. That's a huge number on international travel, and domestic travel is a completely different game altogether. I'll come to it because in domestic travel also we've seen enormous number increasing, right? Now in all of this, as Mayuni pointed out, local people have kind of literally had to give way to this kind of a touristic development, which didn't happen on a sustained basis. It happened too sudden. It was too quick. There are a lot of people coming in, Western investors or foreign investors, let's put it this way, alien investors, right? So if you look at Bodh Gaya, for example, Bodh Gaya itself has about 150 monasteries, right? And none of them is Indian. You find hotels which are in Bodh Gaya, which are not owned by the local community. It's the people, because those places were smaller enough that they didn't have enough infrastructure or investment or economic opportunities to put in this kind of money to develop. And suddenly in 15, 20 years, we see a huge tourist industry around wellness or meditation or yoga or any kind of offering that you're saying, right? Now it's the time for the normal to be corrected, to go back, step back a little bit, And then the communities will probably slowly, they cannot take charge for simple things, right? If a hotel or a property or a spa is owned and operated by an agency which is not native, and if there is no native capacity to run that, then that facility cannot work. That's first. Second, most of the wellness and spiritual tourism that we're talking about is a very personalized experience, right? It is because there is a certain guru, or there is a certain kind of a teacher, or there is a certain kind of big person that you want to go and connect with. It's not just you're going window shopping, right? With spiritual tourism, that doesn't happen. You're going there with a very clear intention. Now, to build up that kind of a capacity, it's beyond the local community to do it. And therefore, there will be very complex situations that will come up that we are not exposed to earlier, right? So for example, the monasteries will be there, but if there are no monks in there, who's going to go for meditation lessons? Because local community cannot afford that.
But aren't there many tourists just go to like yoga tourism and there's no like guru, there are another Western teachers, so they don't actually have this kind of this figure. I mean, depending on what kind
depending
of
on situation,
right?
But again, because these monks and most of the teachers would be coming from another country or other places, that is restricted mobility, right? So that is going to make a lot of difference. Local people are used in mostly hospitality industry. They're not in the spiritual offering business. So they're kind of two different things.
But even if
And
you're
therefore,
but even if you're in the spiritual offering business, you do have a guru there. Like you say, you're pointing out something that we've seen since the 70s, where tourism itself as an industrial sector really utilizes vertical integrations, very much integrated vertically. So you have a hotel, and then they spread out, and then they also have the dining facilities, this and that. I mean, you're not going to all of a sudden pool together. Unfortunately, I don't think the locals of Bodh Gaya and make a hotel and roadways and everything else. What we're seeing, especially today in Africa, for example, is that Chinese investors are building all of the infrastructure in the same way that Europeans and American investors did in Asia, 20 years earlier, and that's simple kind of economics. So what I'm afraid of is that it's still going to have that problem, right? That when things come back, who's the ones that are less weakened? These big corporations are very much weakened, but they also still have a lot more money, relatively speaking, because they're Western, and even the exchanges are different, and things like that. So I am kind of afraid of that. I think you bring up a really good point.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think that culturally it's also difficult to know, like at least in Thailand, like the kind of wellness, like spa industry, very, very difficult for more local groups to understand what the international, amenities are that this group would be looking for. But if we're thinking about like domestic tourism, then that would be totally feasible for local groups to be able to understand what Thai people might be looking for in terms of wellness or meditation. But going back to what Jayun was asking Mayuni about, like wellness tourism, like what Thai people might think about it. I don't know, exactly, but perhaps they, like, for the most part, kind of take on the like more modern discourses of wellness in order to promote it to the international people. Like, there's this like recharging, and you have a busy life and you can reset over here. But like the monks, if you'd like talk to the actual teachers, then they might want you to come in on that idea, but then they would actually want you to go deeper than just wellness and like recharging for your well-being. They want you to have a kind of transformational experience where your reality would shift and you would understand these kind of Buddhist truths. So they don't have any trouble with you having this idea of, oh, we have a busy life and it can certainly help you with that. But they would hope that there would be a kind of impetus to go deeper into into the religion. So I don't think that they would think about wellness. They're kind of utilizing these discourses, but maybe not like totally believing that that this is the end goal that they would want for the people. If for Buddhists, out of compassion for them.
Yeah. If I can talk about, because this is so fresh in my mind, I was there just before the COVID happened, and I've been talking to people in Bodh Gaya, which is now the spiritual center, if you like, for the Buddhist travelers, right? And you go to Bodh Gaya, we're talking about close to 2 million people every year coming in, right? 2 million people in a spiritual site. What are they doing? Now that's another story of the paper, right? That I'm working on. But out of this, less than 10% are the foreigners. And that's what we talk about, the spiritual seeking, right? The other people who are going in there are going in for many, many other reasons, right? And that to me is going to become, it's the hub of the domestic tourism, right? Because these places then provide an alternative resource for the high-end or elitist tourism or even leisure tourism. Both, I think we also need to be thinking about these places are situated in a certain kind of a socio-spatial fabric. They're not disassociated from their local cultural context. So in Bihar, for example, which is where most of the sites are, now there is no sea, there is no sand, there is no sun. So where do these guys go for tourism? They go to Buddhist sites, right? Because these are huge archaeological parks. So we can't say that that's just tourist because of the image of the place is it's place of Buddha. So there has to be some kind of a spiritual tourism, right? So there are, again, a lot of gradation in between. What I'm trying to say is there is a heaps of gradation that's happening. And these places will survive only if that entire spectrum is operating. It cannot operate only on a certain sector. So right now I was talking to somebody in Bodh Gaya, and not a single monastery has got international monks there because most of them have actually gone back or they're contained. So there's zero activity. If that activity is not there, the trickle-down effect is zero. The domestic travelers would want to go there, but they cannot travel. So it's a kind of a situation where, okay, domestic tourists, probably another 2-3 months, nobody will go. But again, it will start back because these places are serving a certain kind of a clientele. So that will continue. The nature will change. The nature will definitely change. That's what we're coming to. I also wanted to raise another point, which is kind of a little moving on to it. Because with India, for example, I can talk about what's happening in India, right? In India, wellness tourism is essentially about going on a spiritual retreat, 6 days, 7 days, 3 days, 5 days, yoga programs and all of that. Now, who are these people who are doing it? They're the big businessmen, businesswomen, professionals, high class, company paid, all of that, right? Individual middle class working population, they can hardly find time and resources to devote to this. Or else people who are on the spectrum where health has become an issue, diabetes, other overall bodily problems. Now, those are the people who are wanting to go and spend like $2,000 for a program. Right? Now, all of that is going to change because there is the economy is in a bad shape. Right? But it's the upper middle class, the middle class, which will have the urge to travel. And that travel is going to be to different places, not necessarily the wellness places, right? So this raises another point, which is suddenly everybody's realized that life is too short. It can change over a matter of weeks, probably months. So my suspicion is someone like me would say, I need to get my bucket list ready now. I need to travel. I need to go and see these places before I die, right? Because there is a certain sense of urgency that we never know when the next COVID will come in. So there is this young population, there is anybody with a little bit of resources is going to go that way, right? So in that sense, we are also looking at probably, my suspicion, resurgence of backpacker tourism in some of these beautiful areas that are being unexplored. And technology, particularly information technology, is going to change the way we look at spiritual tourism. because now you don't have to rely on one big guru of Beatles to go and pray to that guru. There are lots of other smaller providers who has got a little hutment somewhere, a little kind of a compound or 5 acres land, and they would offer their services, and there will be uptake. So the demand supply chain is going to change. To me, that is big thing that is going to change. Just think about Airbnb in spiritual tourism, right? Number of providers increase, number of suppliers increase. Sorry, that's too much to get into, but this is just an idea of where we might be seeing this going on.
I also get nervous though, that people are thinking, so like this is a big paradigm shift. You know, there are really two camps that I've seen. I've been doing a lot of analysis of this stuff because I have a book coming out on study abroad. And of course, study abroad has been just decimated. You know, we've just stopped, you know, for years, probably for more than a year. It's going to happen like this. But you have these two camps, you know, in the tourism and study abroad fields, where you have the one camp that's like, especially, you know, more of the business oriented people are saying that, you know, let's get back to business as usual. We need your help to promote us. All it is a marketing game, right? And I can see where that has credence. I mean, I was a tour operator before I went back to graduate school and got my PhD. And I worked in Southeast Asia, and I was there for, well, I was in Italy over 9/11. I was there for SARS, avian flu. I was in Vietnam and everything. And I mean, you know, granted I was 20 something, so I didn't care like the 20-year-olds now. But you know, it was like, you know, it bounced back very quickly. You know, everything bounced, including these destinations, you know, associated with terrorism. Bali was, you know, there were bombings at the time when I was there. We had to stop our Bali tours. You know, so there were, you know, so and it bounced back really quickly. So I can see where they're saying this, but we've never had like a global shutdown at this level. And we also never had, like you said, Kieran, the virtual, you know, the infrastructure, the technological infrastructure. And you see the other pole of discourses in the tourism industry that I've seen, as well as in the study abroad, is that those people who were maybe critiquing tourism and study abroad as unsustainable, right? That you know, environmentally, ecologically unsustainable. Now they're saying, great, look at this. You can see the Himalayas for the first time. You know, dolphins are returning to Venice, which isn't true, but you know, that kind of stuff, because they're seeing that this is an opportunity to reset, and you're getting these very utopian ideas amid all of the, you know, of all of the fear. And so I think there's probably a midpoint that's going to go on, and it's not going to be as utopian as we see, but hopefully the change agents can be, I guess, politically motivated enough to push a little bit for these improvements, right? These community-based travels, these you know, more sustainable travels, slow tourism, you know, and slow food. But I don't know. We don't know. I mean, I think it's really up in the air, and I don't want to, you know, watch this a year from now and be like, God, we were just so naive.
I know,
you know,
yeah.
about this stuff. You know.
Yeah.
We're hopeful. You know, we're hopeful right now amid all of this uncertainty. It's nice to see people who are thinking the glass is half full, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, even only like February, some scholars saying we're gonna be all really responsible and sustainable, but some places are reopening and it's not happening. So, yeah.
The sustainability discourse is really interesting too, because from monitoring like study abroad chats among administrators, and talking to different administrators in different universities for this book, you know, one of the things that we found is that people are definitely jumping on the bandwagon of sustainability. They're saying, wow, for the first time, we're going to meet our carbon emissions goals, you know, that we never meet. But it doesn't seem that there's really any intentional, like saying, okay, now we're going to reset and we're going to make these trips more sustainable. We're going to stay longer, not use the transportation. We're going to teach more sustainable. No, I mean, they're just saying this is a great side note, you know, for now to meet some of these arbitrary, you know, levels that we needed to meet, that we knew we weren't ever going to do, but we're not going to like change anything. And these are the people who are, you know, running the stuff. So, you know.
Yeah. So I think, But thank you so much, Michael. Really good point. I think we have to wrap up here. I don't think we were successful on YouTube living, but I will definitely make sure to post and distribute this again. Sorry about this, but yeah, but discussion and conversation was really interesting, really good from anthropological religious studies, Balinese Indian perspectives. I was learning a lot, so that's really good. Of course, there's uncertainties and complexities, and again, we're not fortune tellers, and yeah, it's difficult to kind of conclude anything at the moment, but definitely worth chatting about. It'll be really interesting if we meet again in 6 months and kind of chat about this again. It'll be very, very interesting, right? But thank you so much for your time. Do you have any like a closing note to
Kieran,
say?
did you say that? Are there any questions on YouTube?
Actually, it didn't go live. I don't know why.
Oh,
So it went.
No, it didn't go because
Yeah, so I'll post this later. So if there are any comments and questions, yeah, we can see. Maybe
yeah, you
we
could
can
put it
discuss
there.
that next time we meet.
Probably you can collect all the questions and send it to us.
Yeah, I will do that. And meet in December and
Okay.
discuss about this. But sorry about the technical issue. I checked last night. Everything was okay, but anyways. But thank you guys.
All right,
Hope you
thank
stay
you.
safe
Thank
and
you.
well. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for
Good
your
talking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
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 Bye.